What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here. Back again talking college football, and today we are discussing the Week 11 main slate, the marquee Saturday games. Before we get started, if you like this content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. Those things help a small channel like this a lot. Thank you if you've done that. You'd be shocked how much something like that actually does help. If you have a request for later in the week, we will do our additional show Friday. Anything we miss here, G5 games, maybe some teams that have underachieved. I don't know, maybe a Clemson, Florida State here and there. We'll hit those extra games, so leave those in the comments. And last thing, if you or somebody you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we're going to start things off in the Big 12, believe it or not. But we have probably the game of the year in this conference. BYU takes on Texas Tech. Might surprise some. Texas Tech is a 10-point favorite in this game. The total is 51.5. Not super surprising to me. BYU has lived dangerously the entire season. Outside of a cupcake non-con where they played Portland State, Stanford, and East Carolina, they move into Big 12 play and have two games already with a post-game win expectancy below 30%. And this is one of the easiest schedules in the conference. They finished with a 30% post-game win expectancy to Colorado, a game they won by 3 points. And last time out, they had a 38% win expectancy against Iowa State. Now, that score finished 41-27. So how did we get to a 38% post-game win expectancy? Well, Iowa State threw an interception at the BYU 23. They threw a pick six. They threw a third interception at the BYU 26. And they fumbled on a punt where a player just accidentally touched the ball. It wasn't even, a true muffing in the sense of how they're normally muffed. So, fortunate. I mean, football's played on a football field. It's not played in a classroom. Post-game win expectancy is context. It still does not mean everything. What you can say based on those data points is BYU is living dangerously and coming out ahead in very close games. That's not even it. They've played an overtime game against Arizona. Now, they were the rightful winner there. But they played Utah to a field goal, and I'm not sure they were the rightful winner. They did have a 65% post-game win expectancy. But, man, that game was just all over the place. I bet the over in that game. It certainly did not come in because Utah had a turnover on down to BYU 12. BYU had won themselves at the Utah 32. Then Utah went out there, had another turnover on downs at the 28, muffed a punt, turnover on down at the 8, threw an interception at their own 37, 12 penalties. Just Utah could not get out of their own way. Texas Tech, meanwhile, only blip on the radar for them, Arizona State with their backup quarterback. And it was close, 4.8 yards per play to 4.3. Basically, they couldn't throw the ball with Will Hammond. So getting Baron Morton back has been huge for this team. Their other data points positively, they slaughtered Utah. That was another Will Hammond game. So a feather in their cap that they were able to win with the backup QB. They crushed Houston in a game where they went 5 of 7 on field goals. Punch one in the end zone, why don't you? They crushed Kansas, and then they crushed Kansas State last week on the back of a 5-turnover game. So it's been solid for Texas Tech. Injuries here, more impactful on BYU. Their stud running back, LJ Martin. Then they have a couple defenders, Sael Isera at linebacker, defensive backs Tommy Prassis, Tavion Beasley, and Raider DeMooney. For Texas Tech, it's basically just Skylar Gil-Howard. Not going to play here with that foot injury. So for BYU, Bear Bachmeier has had a good season for a freshman quarterback. He's lived a little dangerously. 62% completion percentage for him, 8.3 yards per attempt, 10 big-time throws, 8 turnover-worthy plays. Doesn't take a ton of sacks. He's only had 10 of them. But I don't think he's dealing with the best skill position players. The drop rate is 9%, which is a little high. You have one stud receiver in Chase Roberts. Parker Kingston, mainly a kick returner, and now because of injuries, he's been thrust into a full-time role. He's definitely a sprinter, and when you can get the ball in his hands in open space, you can see the dynamic playmaking ability. Sometimes you just have the mental lapses with him, but when everything's clicking, he's an excellent receiver too. The speed, his track speed, I believe he holds some records in Utah. When you get the ball in a guy's hands like that, you can see the big playability. The biggest thing here is their best skill position player, LJ Martin, is questionable. This team is 28th in rushing efficiency. Bear Bachmeier certainly plays a role in that. But the rushing attack certainly would be diminished if they lose LJ Martin for any length of time. They already don't have Sion Moa, so they're kind of turning to like Preston Rex played a lot of like running back in their last game. He's not really a true running back. So I just have a lot of questions what this looks like if LJ Martin misses the game. Fortunately, the O-line has been a strength of this team. They're 24th in pass blocking, 5th in run blocking. They're still playing 4 different guards. That's mainly because they were hurt in the beginning of the year. Like Waylon Luwapaho, he missed time and now he's back. He should play, honestly, every snap. He's excellent. But you're still trying to see them rotate in Sony Makassini, Kyle Safarsiach. I'm not really sure why. Leus is pretty good. But that's really the only thing on the offensive line that concerns me. You're just rotating a lot. It's still been good. There's nothing really to look at and say, okay, they've been suspect. But they're facing Texas Tech, who's the #1 defense in the country, efficiency-wise. Yeah, level of competition means something here, but it's an awesome unit. You look at the player personnel, David Bailey, Lee Hunter, Romello Height, AJ Holmes, even with Skylar Gilhoward hurt, this is an amazing defensive line. Jacob Rodriguez is a top 5 linebacker in the country. Ben Roberts opposite him, excellent. Your secondary's played a lot better recently. Quarterbacks have faced not always the best, but Cole Wisniewski, John Curry, excellent players here. This is by far, the toughest defense BYU will have faced the entire season, and I'm not sure it is particularly close. The second best defense, probably Utah. But yeah, this could be a rude awakening for BYU offensively, especially if they do not have LJ Martin. Meanwhile, Baron Morton, he just operates the offense to a degree where Will Hammond could not. They're very different quarterbacks, so it was interesting to see them lean on Will Hammond, who's mainly a dual threat guy. Baron Morton is a pure pocket passer, air raid guy. He has a 67.5% completion percentage, 9.5 yards per attempt, 10 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays, 4 interceptions. He's only taken 7 sacks. His main problem, when he scrambles, he just does not know how to protect himself, and he continually gets hurt, which is obviously it already cost him a game this year. Wide receivers also have an 8.8% drop rate. It's not always been pretty, but they throw the ball a ton. Skill players are awesome here for Texas Tech. You have the running backs. They run a 2-back committee of Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey. Both are excellent. You have 3 receivers that you can rely on, Caleb Douglas, Coy Aiken, and Reggie Virgil, the MAC transfer. All 3 have been excellent this season. You have a 5-star behind him in Micah Hudson. He's not even playing. He played 4 snaps last week, which is crazy what this team has done. And then your offensive line. Oh, I should mention Terrence Carter, your excellent tight end. He's been amazing for this team when he's not running into defenders unnecessarily and getting hurt. Anyway, offensive line is excellent for this team as well. 10th in pass blocking, 31st in run blocking. They've had one issue all year. It's been Will Jados, who is a MAC transfer playing guard. They played Cash Cleveland 54 snaps and Jados 24 last week. Now, Jados was on the injury report, but this kind of goes both ways. I think Cash Cleveland would have started, but he was hurt to begin the year. Now, Jados came into the week injured. That could be a wise change for them because he's been their weakest link on a unit that's otherwise very, very good. So that's at least worth noting. And then the defense for BYU, they're 44th. They have a weakness against the run. They're 70th there. 27th in coverage, which is a pretty good unit. But you look at this unit up front, they've kind of been searching for answers. You have John Tomopeo, who is a defensive tackle, can rush the passer a little bit. Otherwise, they just don't have a lot on this defensive line. And for them to come in this low in run defense, they have not faced that difficult of an opposing slate of rushing attacks. So far, they've gotten beat up by Iowa State, 5.4 yards per carry. Utah, 6.1, that'll happen. Arizona, 5.0. Those are their last 3 games. So that's concerning to me against Texas Tech, who could certainly run the ball. I have not played this yet. I think there's a chance it gets to a 9.5. That's where it opened. It went out beyond 10. Now it's coming back. I will play Texas Tech at the 10 if needed, but I'm hoping we can get a better number. 9.5s are out there. They're just juiced. So we're going to wait and see if we can't get a regular 9.5 in this spot and move forward with Texas Tech. All right, next up. Where are we going next? LSU Bama. All right. A game maybe not as enticing after the Brian Kelly firing, but still an excellent game, a rivalry, of course. Bama ends up as a 10-point favorite. Both these teams are off a bye. To get here, obviously, it's been disappointing for LSU. They have the Clemson win, which is aged poorly by no fault of their own. Clemson can't stop stumbling. Then they beat Louisiana Tech and Florida, another team who's fired their coach. Since then, they lose to Ole Miss by 5 points. That game was probably not quite as – the victory should have been wider in favor of Ole Miss, I'll put it that way. They beat South Carolina, who's reeling. Then they lose to Vanderbilt, lose to Texas A&M. Boom, Brian Kelly is fired, and that's how we get here. Bama, meanwhile, has lived dangerously. They played a relatively easy non-con, one where they lost to Florida State. And then they beat Georgia with a 20% post-game win expectancy. Beat Vanderbilt by, it was a score of 30-14, but the average margin of victory was 10.1. Vanderbilt's 2 red zone turnovers resulted directly in 10 Bama points. Bama also scored at the 11th hour. Since then, they beat Missouri with a 28% post-game win expectancy, and then they played Tennessee and South Carolina. So it's been a little dangerous for Bama to this point. Injuries in the game, Tyree Adams for LSU on the offensive line. Gabriel Relaford's been out for a while on the edge, and Whit Weeks at linebacker. The current rumblings are that Whit Weeks and Adams are likely to miss this game, but we haven't gotten the SEC injury report. Bama's pretty healthy outside of some edge injuries they sustained way back in the beginning of the year, like Quay Russaw and Jamarian Lathan, so not much has changed. Garrett Nussmeier, he is at a 66% completion percentage, 6.8 yards per attempt, 15 big-time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays. He's taken 14 sacks. His receivers have a 9% drop rate. He's not done himself many favors. A lot of people have blamed the injury. LSU hasn't really listed him, so I don't know. It's hard to say. And there's not a great infrastructure around him that starts with the offensive line. They lost a ton of guys last year to the NFL draft led by Will Campbell. They've done very little to replace them. Currently 94th in pass blocking, 118th in run blocking. They've been very hurt on this unit. Tyree Adams, they need him back. Without him, they're essentially working with a group of just entirely new faces. Even a guy like, I don't know, Paul Mabenga can't really play out there. He's been a disaster. So now we have a freshman tackle in Carius Kern playing. He's not been great. You have a redshirt freshman in Weston Davis. He's been awful. He's like barely even functional. Your 2 best players are your transfers inside Braylon Moore and Josh Thompson. That's at least his strength, but you haven't even found a guard opposite them. Coming into the year, we knew Paul Mabenga was a disaster, but Cone Eccles hasn't lived up to expectation. The thing is, without Adams, you're now starting 2 redshirt freshmen and a true freshman. These are elite recruits. They just have not quite developed, and Brian Kelly doesn't appear to be the guy to get the job done at any level. So that stems to everything. It hurts Nussmeier. He's not mobile, so he's under pressure more than he should be. The run blocking is what's been really bad. They're 118th, and that certainly affected their run game. They've really searched for answers and haven't found them. Caden Durham has not lived up to expectation. We've seen freshman 4-star Harlem Berry play more. That hasn't really made a difference. But the biggest disappointment to me has been these receivers. They spent a lot of money on this unit, and to have a 9% drop rate, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, they're not doing themselves any favors. They've routinely thrown Chris Hilton on the field, who's been a disaster. Nick Anderson, Aaron Anderson, some of these guys have been banged up at times. Xavier Thomas is having a pretty good year. Barry Brown's having a pretty good year. Kyle Parker even's not bad. But your best players trade as Green. I know he was banged up specifically earlier in the year, but at 6'7", playing tight end, he needs to play more. The one thing that doesn't make a lot of sense that they've done recently is the Bauer Sharp snaps. 28 snaps for him last week as they try to use 12 personnel. Last game, he's been so bad when he's on the field. He can't block, he can't catch, and he's an FCS transfer who played at Oklahoma out of necessity. We just don't need to be doing this. We need to play trade as Green every single snap, then get Aaron Anderson on the field if healthy. Some combination of Xavier Thomas, Barry Brown, Kyle Parker. So it should come as no surprise LSU's offense was not maximized player personnel-wise. But now you're facing Alabama's defense, who is 34th overall. They definitely have a weakness on the defensive line. This unit is 120th in pass rush. The one thing I'll say is they've looked a little better in recent weeks. We've actually seen players like Yanze Pierre emerge, and LTA Overton play decent. Inside, James Smith has been a disaster, but Tim Keenan's been okay since he returned from injury. They're going to run a rotation on the interior. Linebackers a solid unit with Jefferson and Lawson. And then on the back end, They find, wow, that's legit police chase outside my apartment. Normally it's just ambulances running their sirens for, I don't know, funny stuff in Milwaukee. All right. So in the secondary, the one change that they've made is they kind of soft benched Damani Jackson. And after, his embarrassing performances against like Vanderbilt and stuff, I think that makes sense. So we're starting to see more Deshaun Jones. Sorry, I can't get over that. Maybe you see the Alabama secondary perform a little better on the back end now, and they're already 12th in coverage. So that's kind of the only change they made recently that I think is worth noting. It looks like Alabama's defense is playing a little better in recent weeks. Offensively, Ty Simpson's having an excellent season, 68% completion percentage, 8.4 yards per attempt, 14 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays. He's only taken 15 sacks. It's been a good season for him there. The offensive line, the one thing they stopped doing, they didn't rotate as much. So Alabama, with some injuries they had early in the season, we were seeing Wilkin Formby rotate with Michael Carroll. We were seeing all the guards rotate. They were playing 4 of them. Jaden Roberts, Geno Vandermark, Cam Dewberry, William Sanders. They severely cut that rotation, and I think they chose the right players. We're seeing Roberts play again full-time. Dewberry was the other player they used mainly. So it looks like they're sort of maximizing this unit. Proctor, of course, is having a good season, but perhaps you see better play moving forward from that offensive line. Not that it's been bad. Currently 10th in pass blocking, 82nd in run blocking. Skill players, I've never really been a fan of the run game. People love Jam Miller. I'm not really sure why. He's been about as mid as you could possibly be. So now we're starting to see sophomore 4-star Daniel Hill play a little more. The receiving game, they should be healthier. It looks like Latsier Brooks is going to return, as well as Isaiah Horton. He got hurt in their last game, which should give them a little more balance to the unit that forced them to play a little more Ryan Williams than maybe they wanted to previously. Jeremy Bernard still being an absolute stud. For the record, Ryan Williams has played a little better recently. It's just been some concentration drops that have affected him early in the season. LSU's defense, they're very good in coverage. They're 27th. That's basically all they can do. They're 31st overall. They're very poorly coached at this point. I know people love Blake Baker. I don't know the fascination with Harold Perkins. In their last game, they were out of nickel like 50% of the time. And every time you're out of nickel, they basically just get cooked in coverage. They can do whatever they want, other teams throwing at Harold Perkins. For as athletic as he is, he basically needs to brush the passer. He can't do anything in coverage. So them playing 3 linebackers, especially without Whit Weeks, makes no sense. And that's exactly what they did. I have no idea how this looks, but I mean, now you're playing Harold Perkins, West Weeks, and Devon Keys. All 3 are below average. Your best players are in your secondary. Why are we going out of nickel, man? Like DJ Pickett, Mansour Delane, Tamarcus Cooley, AJ Halsey, even your nickel, PJ Woodland is way above average. Why are we playing 3 linebackers at the expense of a nickel corner? I don't know, man. They have no good edge rushers. Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn showing why they were cast off by their previous programs. Inside, a little bit above average for McKinley and Gooden. Alabama's not a running team. They prefer to throw the ball over the top of you with Ty Simpson and these receivers. But you should probably be able to run in this game. LSU just doesn't really have a competent rushing attack. And it started to look worse in the secondary. And I think that's largely just because not anything they've done. You can just pick on these guys. Like Marcel Reed at 9.6 yards per attempt. Just throw at the weak players that they leave on the field, and you can beat this team. Don't throw at Mansour Delane, throw at Harold Perkins. And that's exactly what teams are doing. I lean Alabama. I'm not sure I'll get there. This LSU team has been a disaster, but they clearly have talent that's clearly underachieved and not been maximized. Just not sure what to make of it in this game. Big Ten game of the week is Oregon taking on Iowa. 6-point spread in favor of the road Oregon Ducks, a 41.5 total in this game. Both teams are off a bye. To get here, Oregon's played a relatively easy schedule. Their marquee win came against Penn State. I know people have been crushing them for that win because they went to overtime. Should have been better based on what Penn State has shown recently. The only thing I'll say there is, 1, Penn State did play better under James Franklin before he got fired. And 2, that was before they lost Drew Aller. Since Penn State moved to Grunkemeyer, they've been non-functional. So they play the best version of Penn State. Otherwise, they lost to Indiana. A rifle loss. It could have been worse, honestly. Mendoza threw a bad pick 6 in that game. Otherwise, they played essentially nobody. Your non-conference was a complete joke for this team. They did crush Northwestern, who's been a decent team. Then they crushed Rutgers and Wisconsin. Wisconsin was 21-7. They just clearly came out with a vanilla game plan, not showing anything in that contest, which I would have done too. Iowa, meanwhile, has lived dangerously. They had a close game against Penn State as well in their second most recent contest. They win by 1 point. It should have been worse. They should have won by more. They had a blocked field goal attempt on like a 65-yard attempt, which they had no business even attempting. But they crushed Penn State on the ground, rightful win. In between those games, annihilated Wisconsin and Minnesota. They did lose to Indiana as well. That game should have been worse, not only because Indiana ran a safety back. They intentionally ran a safety in to cost the cover and make that a 5-point game rather than 7. But Indiana had 2 very short 4th and 1s. They didn't convert. Iowa got a punt blocked again in this game. Like, what is with these blocked special teams plays? Anyway, the big problem with Iowa was the loss to Iowa State, where they had a 25% post-game win expectancy. Iowa's offense is still limited, man. And it's been a little better because they've leaned into their strengths, but it's still a unit. And last thing, there's not very many injuries in this game. You have a couple that have been plaguing Iowa for the season like a Strenga, but that shouldn't worry. Iowa's offense is just limited under Gajewski and these receivers. The completion percentage of 65%, 5.7 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. It's just limited. He's a game manager. He has taken 11 sacks, which is a pretty good number, but his offensive line is very, very good. They're not really putting him under pressure often. It's only when he holds the ball too long. The receivers do have a 9% drop rate. That is a problem. And it's going to be a problem throughout the rest of the season unless Reese Vanderzee is Randy Moss or something, because you just don't have talented players. The offensive line is your strength. They're 5th in pass blocking, 1st in run blocking. It's an amazing unit led by Jennings Dunker, but they go 5 deep. There's not a single weak link on this unit. So where Iowa's had success recently is embracing that, turning into a complete run-first offense, and getting Gronowski involved on the ground, which has been really important. But this is about as healthy as the running back unit has been. Kamari Moulton's out there. Jazz Patterson's back, as well as Xavier Williams. You can go 3 deep there if you want. And for better or worse, Reese Vanderzee is your best receiver. He's back now, and that's been a difference-making unit because you can just remove Seth Anderson from the field for a few more plays than you normally would. The other player they should use more is Caden Weichin, who I don't know why he can't play offense. Apparently, he's only capable of special teams. But if you could somehow manufacture offense through those two, I think it would benefit Iowa a lot. It's still going to be a limited offense. And my biggest concern is, although you have a great offensive line, like Oregon just knows exactly what you're going to do every single play, basically. And Oregon's 12th in defense, 33rd in run defense, 37th in pass rush, 6th in coverage. This is an excellent unit. And they're led by 2 stud pass rushers. I don't know how many opportunities they're going to get to rush the passer here, but this defensive line is probably the best unit for Oregon. Mateo Uagalele, Tatum Teote, Bear Alexander, Amari Washington, they go deep here. Bryce Betcher's a good linebacker. This is a strong front seven, one of the better front sevens that Iowa's faced this year. I think you could make an argument it is the best front seven Iowa has faced this year. And on the back end, you still have some pretty solid players too, like Dylan Thielemann, the Purdue transfer, is having an excellent season. Brandon Finney's playing well. The freshman 4-star. There's not really a weakness for Oregon. You just have to be a very talented team to move the ball on them, which I'm not 100% sure Iowa can do with this offense. Maybe that's just some residual scar tissue year over year. But I think this is their toughest opponent yet. Meanwhile, on the other side, Dante Moore has regressed from the Heisman hype he was receiving after the Penn State game. Still, 71% completion, 8.7 yards per attempt, 16 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays, only 9 sacks. He's having a great year. And I like the Oregon offensive line. I do think it is a bit limited, especially when they have to play very good teams. You're just seeing some of the limitations from these low-level transfers, Isaiah World and Alex Harkey primarily, when they play the elite pass rushing teams, and they'll face that here. So it's been a great unit. Yeah, they're going to beat up on teams that are lower level, without a doubt. But what do they look like against an actual pass rush? That's a concern. Skill players are good for this team. They're going to play 4 running backs, upwards of that, depending on who's healthy. Jaden Lamar wasn't a boot. They're 29th in rushing efficiency. I don't care who they use. They've been excellent. Every one of them is good. Darier Hill had an excellent game previously. And I think it looks like they're starting to bench Malik Benson. This could be a good change for them. Malik Benson is no difference maker. Jeremiah McClellan slowly playing more snaps. Last time out, McClellan 30 snaps, Benson 16. I could be down for this change because that would give you a 3 wide receiver set of DeCorian Moore, who's a stud, Gary Bryant, and Jeremiah McClellan, plus Kenyon Sadiq at tight end. Great skill position players for this team. Now they're facing Iowa's defense, who's been very good this year, and their strength is up front. So I think that could immediately test this Oregon offensive line. Iowa comes in 8th in pass rush, 43rd in run defense. So that brings me to the player personnel. Ethan Hurkett, Max Llewellyn having excellent seasons. Aaron Graves is awesome inside. They've changed around their linebackers a little bit. I still don't think this unit's that great, but you're starting to see Jaden Montgomery, Carson Scherer play. Carson Scherer has been playing the whole year, but Montgomery playing a little more. That's been a positive change after Jaden Harrell was awful. But there are occasional lapses on the back end for this defense, despite really everyone having a good season. The weakest link is Entringer at safety. Lutmer's elite in the nickel. TJ Hall's having a much better year than I thought, and Nwankpa's having a decent year as well. They also haven't faced a receiving attack like this. I'm not sure they face anything close to this, like DeCorian Moore coming through. Their best comparison is probably that Indiana team, but we'll see how this goes. I still think Iowa has defensive advantages. At the end of the day, we make this very efficient. The model has this minus 5.8 in favor of Oregon. I think Oregon is a more talented team than Iowa, so that's where I tend to side, but this is not one we're going to take. This is one we're just purely going to watch with the efficiency in the market currently. Should be a fun game. Indiana, Penn State, one game I will be playing. Indiana has been absolutely dominating teams. They've allowed 16 combined points in the last 2 games against UCLA and Maryland. Before that, they annihilated Michigan State. Covered against Oregon, a 30-20 win. They beat Iowa. We mentioned both of those games in the previous contest. And they slaughtered Illinois. They've answered really every test they've had this year. The only time they've really not covered has been against Iowa, where they got an intentional safety to not cover, and Michigan State, where they allowed a backup quarterback to drive the length of the field and kick a field goal to not cover. Just weird. But anyway, Indiana will firmly put the beating on you if they can. Penn State, meanwhile, has collapsed. We mentioned all of their losses. They don't have a Power 4 win yet. Lose to Oregon, lose to UCLA, lose to Northwestern, obviously get the whole staff fired, lose your QB, lose to Iowa, and they got blown out by Ohio State last week. The injuries for both teams. For Penn State, Elijah Surratt, that's the big one. Hamstring injury for him. We don't know if he'll play. Drew Evans was held out. He should be back. Aiden Fisher as well at linebacker. Kellen White is done for them on the edge. For Penn State, the big one is Drew Aller. So you go to Ethan Grunkemeyer, but Tony Rojas at linebacker is another name. Under Grunkemeyer, this offense has been non-existent. 62% completion, 5 yards per attempt. He has 1 big-time throw, 3 turnover-worthy plays, 4 sacks. It's just non-functional. The offensive line has not lived up to expectations either. They do come in 13th in pass blocking, 32nd in run blocking. But I don't know what they're doing, man. They just benched both of their guards last week. Vega Ione and Anthony Dunco both played 48 snaps as they tried to rotate in Cooper Cousins and TJ Shanahan. Maybe that was a product of the game being out of hand, but I don't know, man. Vibes are bad everywhere. And if you're starting to rotate offensive linemen, that's not good because your run game has been a mess. They're 48th in rushing efficiency, which doesn't seem too bad. But then you consider, okay, we return Nick Singleton and Katrin Allen. Nick Singleton has had a putrid season. Just doesn't make sense. And they've still been good. 50th or whatever it was, 56th. It's above average. The expectation was like a top 10 rushing attack. So clearly they've not lived up to expectation. And then these receivers, man, Trevor Pena, Devontae Ross, and mainly Kyron Hudson, for them to come in 106th in receiving efficiency with the money they spent on this position, getting those 3 transfers is downright criminal. Now, Gruntmeyer has not helped them at all. But at the same time, they should be trying to elevate the young signal caller. It's not like they were a good passing attack when it was Aller in there. So this offense has been an utter disaster. And now you're facing Indiana, who has the 2nd-ranked defense in the country. I mean, like, my only real worry is that they continue to hold out like Aiden Fisher as a precaution because this unit should have massive advantages. Your defensive line with Mikael Kamara, Stephen Daly, Tyreek Tucker, Hosea Wheeler, they go like 6 deep at defensive tackle. They have a massive advantage. If they don't get home via the pass rush, like D'Angelo Pons, Devin Boykin having excellent seasons, Lewis Moore, Amari Farrell, this is an amazing secondary. I'm just not really sure how Penn State scores more than a handful of points. And then with Fernando Mendoza playing as well as he is, 72% completion, 9.4 yards per pass attempt. That's nearly a first down every time he throws. 7 sacks, 4 turnover-worthy plays. You don't have any negatives for this offense. You're top 5 in rushing and receiving efficiency. Your offensive line is excellent. 6th in pass blocking, 4th in run blocking. Even if Surratt sits out, Cooper's excellent. EJ Williams is all right. Your run game has been dominant with Hemby and Black. Offensive line should be fully healthy depending on if they want to play Evans in this game. And Penn State's defense has regressed. They're 29th in total defense, 50th against the run, 34th in coverage. Things have gotten worse for them. And now it's one thing playing your FCS teams, your G5 teams, and looking awesome. It's different when you start playing real Big Ten teams and then you allow 13.7 yards per attempt to Julian Sand. You allow 5.4 yards per carry to Ohio State. You allow 7.4 yards per carry to Iowa. You allow 5.4 yards per carry to UCLA. Like Indiana is going to run the ball down your throat if they can. And if you're going to play more in the box, they'll throw the ball over the top. We make this outside the 15. I haven't played it yet. 15.5 is a bad number. I missed the opening 14. I saw some people have some really good look aheads at like 11.5. But there's a chance this comes back down towards like a 14.5 or something. Every point matters, so I'll wait and see where it goes. But fully intend to take Indiana at some point this week. Just going to wait and see where this number settles. Obviously, in no man's land between the key numbers, it's not as important as it could be. Texas A&M, Missouri. Would have been an awesome game. Unfortunately, Missouri onto their third-string quarterback. The spread is 7 in favor of Texas A&M. The total in the game is 48 points. I missed the best number, but I did take an under in this game. Pacing should be even worse than what we're seeing on the screen. I would not be surprised if Missouri slows beyond their 72nd ranked tempo. Texas A&M's already 108th, and both of these teams are very run-heavy. That could even increase with Missouri changing QBs here, but so far, it's been an excellent season for both teams. Texas A&M is undefeated. They lived a little dangerously in certain games, but that's largely just been a fault of their own, having some turnovers in key games. But they have excellent wins. They got the huge non-con win against Notre Dame, and they've taken care of business in the SEC so far. They have played basically 3 or 4 of the worst teams. But again, I would ask you, what was the expectation for A&M, and have they overachieved or underachieved or met expectation? At the very least, I think you can argue they've met expectation. Missouri, meanwhile, they've played really well. They lose to Vanderbilt in their last game. Just a tough break when Bo Pribula went down. They should have beaten Alabama. They had a 72% post-game win expectancy there. So a couple tough breaks. That's how you get to a 2-loss Missouri team. But now they're really reeling with Pribula down onto a third-string quarterback. Matt Zollers, I don't really know what to say. He's a 4-star freshman. It looks like he can run a little bit. We just don't know. We really just don't know. Early returns were not good. 1 turnover-worthy play, 1 sack in a half of football. His receivers also dropped 2 of those passes, so maybe this would look better. But to be honest with you, it's just an unknown. The expectation is a pretty significant drop-off from Pribula to Zollers, which is how you get A&M favored by 7. It's how you get the total plummeting. That's why I took the total. It's the main reason that we are expecting this to not look as good for Missouri. Not to mention, offensive line is very good for Missouri. I like this unit a lot. I think they do have some weak links. When you look at the player personnel, first of all, this team has benefited from a relatively easy non-con. Their early season schedule is how they have some of these efficiency numbers. Like you beat Central Arkansas, you murder Kansas, you crush a G5 Louisiana, and then you play UMass. So all of these metrics elevated a little bit early in the season. Definitely helped their run game. Curtis Piegler has been below average for this unit. And then you get to like a Dominic Gadis has been around average. They have 2 studs in Caden Green and Keegan Trost. But your interior can get beat at times. Ahmad Hardy's rushing production has fallen since we've seen him play in conference, which should have been expected. You play UMass and stuff in non-con, yeah, he's gonna look like Barry Sanders. But at the end of the day, it's still a Louisiana Monroe transfer playing behind a good, not great offensive line. And then the receiving game, it's Kevin Coleman and really everyone else. Donovan Olugbode has been pretty good as a freshman, but he's still not playing a full-time role as they tried out Marquise Johnson and Joshua Manning. And my real question is, can this unit elevate Zollers? I don't think so. I really don't. I think it's just limited enough, and Pribula was giving them a lot with the ground, buying time. I think this could be pretty hard for them to score, not to mention A&M's defense is excellent, especially up front. This unit is 7th in pass rush. 7th. And now you're taking Cassius Howell, who's having an amazing season, putting it against a Missouri offensive line that has had a few struggles against better teams. You're putting this up against a quarterback who maybe holds on the ball too long. Cassius Howell, Dayan Hayes, Tyler Onyedim. I'm a little worried about what this looks like for Missouri. My only real concern with A&M, and it's not even in this game, it's just moving forward. Their secondary, they're using Des Ricks, who's below average. They have a couple players that really aren't difference makers. It's sort of Marcus Radcliffe. You have a couple average guys in the Des Ricks as a liability. Teams that can throw the ball over you can score on A&M. I'm just not sure that's a real viable path for Missouri in this game. Meanwhile, Marcel Reed is towards the top of Heisman rankings. He's having an excellent season. I thought this would be the case. I know a lot of people did because of the upgrades they made. Marcel Reed was a limited QB last year. He can do a lot with his legs, but as a passer, somewhat limited. That's changed kind of, not a ton. He has a 61% completion, 8.8 yards per attempt, 12 big-time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays. Where he really excels, and this was a big feather in his cap last year, he doesn't take sacks. 5 sacks this year. The receivers have a 9% drop rate. That hasn't helped him. But you just don't have a lot of negative plays in this offense. And now when you upgrade everything else, you bring in Concepcion and Mario Craver. I know Le'Veon Moss went down, but you still have excellent running backs. You still have 5-star Reuben Owens. You still have E.J. Smith and Amari Daniels. It doesn't really take that much at quarterbacks. If you don't take sacks, you don't turn the ball over, you can grind out games. And oftentimes they don't even need to do that. They've still been explosive. The offensive line has improved, similar to last year's unit where we thought they might finish and maybe even grow on. 15th in pass blocking, 40th in run blocking. Demetrius Crownover is having a great season. Armaj Reed Adams, Trey Zune especially, he's going to get drafted highly. They need to play well. Missouri is going to bring pressure. That defense does have a very good pass rush between Zion Young, Damon Wilson, and even inside. Very good 3-man rotation with McClellan, Webb, and Graciel. Pretty good linebacker play with Trotter, Rodriguez. But you can throw the ball over the top. The defense sort of mirrors A&M in that way. I don't know what they're doing, man. It looks like they benched Jalen Canelod for Santana Banner. Toriano Pride has been a weak link for this defense, but Dre Norwood got banged up in their recent game, so Toriano Pride might have to play again. We'll see how they approach this, but clearly searching for answers on their defense. Now, Missouri's been great overall, 8th in total defense, 30th in coverage, but that's where they've shown weaknesses. That's the path of least resistance, and now you're facing Mario Craver, you're facing Casey Concepcion. I'm a little worried. At the end of the day, though, like Pavia, Jackson Arnold, that's not saying much, Ty Simpson, they were all below 7 yards per attempt against this Missouri defense. So that is going to be tough for them. I'm not going to lie. We show value on Missouri, even with the change in QB. I can't get there, but where I can make a move is the under. We talked about the pacing. This is one we'll play with the new QB and both teams having excellent defenses. Southern Miss Arkansas State had to throw in a Sun Belt game. This is one of the best Sun Belt games of the year. Arkansas State, after that tough start, has played really well recently. They've rattled off 4 straight wins against Jacksonville State, Georgia Southern, Louisiana, and UL Monroe. Now that's kind of the bottom. They've rattled off 4 straight wins against Texas State, South Alabama, Georgia Southern, and Troy. Now a lot of that's the bottom of the conference, especially South Alabama. Texas State having a woeful year. And the Troy game was a bit surprising too. Couple of those below a 50% post-game win expectancy as well, like Texas State, Arkansas State, 43%. Now, Southern Miss, they've won their last 4 games. That's where you get the Jacksonville State, Georgia Southern, Louisiana, and UL Monroe. But this team actually has some quality wins before that. Crushed App State. They played reasonably well against Mississippi State. So this is a top of the Sun Belt clash that should be a lot of fun. Injuries, Jeffrey Pittman for Southern Miss, Blake Bustard on the offensive line. He returned, but he did not play his full role. Arkansas State's Jaquez Cross, he's out for the year. Alaric Watson. Terry Kirksey allegedly was available, but didn't play in their last game, stud linebacker. And Brandon Greel at defensive back. Braylon Braxton's having an excellent year for Southern Miss, man. 67.5% completion percentage, 8.3 yards per attempt, 20 big time throws, 9 turnover worthy plays, only 11 sacks. The 20 big time throws is crazy for this team. And he runs the ball too. He actually is a big part of that. And this team should be better with their rushing efficiency. It actually doesn't make a lot of sense that they're this bad. And yeah, Jeffrey Pittman's been hurt, but he's an SEC transfer. It's not just him either. This team has Robert Briggs from Utah State. I mean, they go deep at the running back position. And with Braxton being involved, you'd think it would be better, but it has struggled. Where they've won is over the top. And they have a bunch of transfers. Elijah Metcalf, Carl Chester, Braylon Brown. With the quarterback being so dynamic, Braylon Braxton that is, that's where they've really won. And that's evidenced in a pass rate that's slowly increasing for this team. Offensive line, this unit is pretty good overall for the G5, 20th in pass blocking, 88th in run blocking. And they're facing an Arkansas State defense, which is 111th. They've been in a lot of shootouts. They're 105th in run defense, 87th in coverage. Even though Arkansas State has played better, I still think level of competition favors Southern Miss, and this could be a big mismatch in favor of Southern Miss. When you look at Arkansas State's defense, not a lot of difference makers on this unit. I think their best skills probably come up front. You basically have one good corner in Avante Dickerson, and then some real players that could be liabilities for this team, like Brandon Barnes starting at safety has been a disaster for this team. Up front, you at least have like a Cody Siegler and an Aaron Alexander. Even that, I don't think is enough to stop this team. The Southern Miss team has scored on better teams than that. Meanwhile, Jalen Rayner has been really up and down for Arkansas State. A lot of this occurred in non-con when they got blasted. I mean, this team played Arkansas and Iowa State. They did lose to Kennesaw State too, so that was a non-con game. Anyway, Rayner, 66% completion, 6.4 yards per attempt, 10 big-time throws, 17 turnover-worthy plays, and 25 sacks. The 17 turnover-worthy plays, the 24% pressure to sack ratio are way too high. Excuse me, for Rayner, especially considering this offensive line is 9th in pass blocking. Now, they do have their struggles in the run blocking game. That's where they come in 88th. But man, 85th, excuse me. This run block or this pass blocking unit has done Rayner a lot of favors that he hasn't done much with. The only player who's a real liability here is their center, Mason Myers. Noah Smith has kind of been troublesome at times too, he has to play because Alaric Watson's been hurt. But I mean, Tristan Smith and Riley McGee have been excellent for this team. And you have veteran receivers, Corey Rucker, Chauncey Cobb, Hunter Summers. This is a pretty good receiving unit. Yeah, you lost Jaquez Cross, but Kenyon Clay and Devin Spencer have been all right at running back. I still think you're trailing Southern Miss in a lot of areas on this offense, just overall. And then defensively, we mentioned how bad Arkansas State was. Southern Miss is 21st. 53rd in run defense. That's how you want to beat them if you can. But they're 9th in pass rush and 19th in coverage. This is an excellent defense in the Sun Belt. It might be the single best unit. I know James Madison probably has something to say about that. But Jamon Tapp is having an excellent season. This is a former Arizona State transfer. And then Bradarius Lewis, Jaden McKinney, excellent seasons. Michael Montgomery's dominating at linebacker. And where I've been really impressed is the secondary. They have 3 legitimate difference makers in Anthony Richard, Josh Moten, and Ian Foster. This is a very good unit. This is coming down for some reason. Arkansas State has gotten pounded. It was a 6 to open, and now it's 4.5. I know Arkansas State's at home, but I'm really tempted to play Southern Miss. I'm going to wait and see where this closes, but I think there's a real good chance we end up on the Southern Miss side. This has been a profitable team for us for a lot of the season. Not always pretty, but profitable. Georgia, Mississippi State fresh off their first win. Congratulations to them beating Arkansas. Georgia, meanwhile, has played very well this season. They're a lone blip on the radar. Again, should have won, should have beat Alabama, 80% post-game win expectancy. They've played fairly well since then, beating Ole Miss in the shootout, beating Florida in a game that was close, but actually should have probably been wider. They had a 74% post-game win expectancy. This is just kind of what you get in the dogfights of the SEC week in, week out. Mississippi State has essentially played everyone close. They beat Arizona State in non-con, and then close losses to Tennessee, to Florida, Texas in overtime. Obviously, they should have won that game. And then they end up with a win against Arkansas. They should have lost. They had a 27% post-game win expectancy there. But I mean, Arkansas, holy smokes, 18 penalties. 18 penalties? That's wild stuff. So as far as this game goes, your injuries, there are more on Georgia. Colby Young at receiver, he's done for a while. Jordan Hall, DeMello Jones, both got hurt in their last game. Hall, the defensive tackle, Jones, at defensive back. They've been without Daniel Harris for a while. Mississippi State's safety, Jerron Manning, got hurt, the Old Dominion transfer, which is kind of tough. You're going to have to stop Gunnar Stockton. 70% completion, 7.8 yards per attempt, 10 big time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. He's won largely by not taking negatives. He only has 10 sacks. The 6 turnover-worthy plays are excellent for him. We're starting to see the offense play a little better. And I think some of this stems from the offensive line, who was maybe the most banged-up offensive line in the SEC to begin the year. But now everyone's back. I don't know how healthy, but they're at least playing. So they've had the luxury of actually doing some rotation. They're only playing 5 offensive linemen. It's something crazy. But you're seeing Juan Gaston still play a fair amount. Ernest Green is back. Dontrell Glover, Drew Bobo, Micah Morrison, Monroe Freeland. All of them played at least 46 snaps in their last game. This is the healthiest Georgia's offensive line has been and the best they've looked. 22nd in pass blocking, 49th in run blocking. That factors in the time when Georgia was injured. So this has the upside to be an excellent unit, which would benefit them because I'm not sure the rushing attack is dynamic on its own. Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier, 2 second-year 4-stars. They've looked decent. So there's some upside there. The receiving game, Zachariah Branch is still – he's played well. I'm not sure he's – they paid a lot for him. I don't know if he's lived up to that. Your secondary receivers are London Humphreys and Dylan Bell. This team will often get into 12 with Lucky and Delp. So they have multiple ways to use their player personnel, which I like. There's not that many difference makers, but if you're going to work from a solid infrastructure behind the offensive line, I think that can be a very successful way Georgia plays. They've done that before. Mississippi State is 49th in total defense. Interestingly, 1 spot ahead of Georgia, weirdly enough. But this team has a very weak pass rush. That's kind of been a systemic issue for them year over year. Otherwise, they're top 50 in run defense and coverage. The problem is just when you don't rush the passer and your edge rushers like Malik Silla, Braden Jennings are more of run stoppers, there are ways you can program around that and then beat this team. Isaac Smith is their best defender. He's their nickel. And outside of that, I think there are ways to beat this team like Kelly Jones. He's had a good year, but Diego Brumfield sort of struggled. Your safeties, even with, especially if Jerron Manning is hurt, that would open up another potential avenue. Hunter Washington was pretty bad in his stead last time out. So you can beat this Mississippi State team. We've seen them in multiple shootouts. They got crushed by Tennessee and stuff. So I think Georgia can definitely score. Conversely, Blake Shapen's had a bit of a rough year. 65% completion percentage, 8.4 yards per attempt, 13 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays. But he's taken 29 sacks. That's a 31% pressure to sack ratio. That's way, way, way too high. The receivers have an 8% drop rate, so that hasn't helped either. But these are some pretty bad systemic issues. And it's not like Mississippi State's a bad offensive line. They're 58th in pass blocking, 107th in run blocking. And similar to Georgia, this is the healthiest they've been. They got back Albert Reese. So that has allowed them to at least take Jimothy Lewis off the field most of the time. Now, Reese is continually in and out of the lineup, so I would at least wonder how that looks. It appears he's still banged up. So his status looms large. That could be a big swing point in this game if he's not going to go. Because when you have to play some combination of Javen James, Luke Work, or Jimothy Lewis, that's where things can get pretty bad for this team. Skill players, been pretty impressed with Anthony Evans and Brennan Thomas, the transfers, the cast-offs. They've looked great. The run game is the strength of this team with Devon Booth and Fluff Bothwell, 2 excellent backs. But Georgia's defense, while limited, I think this unit still could probably give some problems to Mississippi State, especially the defensive line. The big problem with Georgia is their inability to rush the passer this year. They're 130th in pass rush efficiency, just no real answer from the edge group. Gabe Harris, Quinsavious Johnson, Joseph Jonah. They're probably going to have to address this position in the offseason. They have 1 legitimate pass rusher, and he's not even really a pass rusher. He's more of a run stopper inside. Kristen Miller, a defensive tackle. He's the only difference-making defensive lineman. You do have a couple other decent guys like C.J. Allen. He's a linebacker, though. Dalen Everett, he's a corner. K.J. Bolden, he's a safety. there are some issues with this defense. Now, I'm a little worried about the Mississippi State offensive line, but we've routinely seen shootouts with Georgia games. I'm a little concerned for that reason. Ultimately, I don't think it's enough, and I think Georgia probably covers this spread. The hook has me weary, so I'm probably not going to end up on a Georgia minus the 7.5, but that is where we would lean. Auburn, Vanderbilt. Another SEC firing. It's every team at this point almost. Auburn obviously loses to Kentucky 10-3. Hugh Freeze is gone. More on that later. Just a disaster season for Auburn again. Vanderbilt, meanwhile, lost to Texas in a very competitive game. They only had a 33% post-game win expectancy, but to get to that point, I mean, very close game, but Vanderbilt fumbled on their own 38, gave Texas a field goal. The real problem was Vandy got beat in the trenches bad. 21 pressures on 50 dropbacks for Pavia. It was just a tough game. So Hugh Freeze is out. I don't know what they're going to do. Damari Alston left the team a while ago. They've been down. Horatio Fields, Connor Lew, their stud center's out. Vandy is mostly healthy. I don't even know who Auburn's going to play at quarterback. I don't know if it matters. I never understood the change to Daniels. We had a big sample of Ashton Daniels at Stanford. He was awful. I don't know how he got a roster spot at Auburn. So you go from Jackson Arnold to Ashton Daniels. What happened? He took 7 sacks. What was the problem with Jackson Arnold? He took 30 sacks before he got benched. Deuce Knight is on this roster, man. Like, does Deuce Knight just suck? Maybe he does. I mean, if he does, then it probably justifies the Hugh Freeze firing even more. How could you get 3 quarterbacks and all of them suck? 2 of them 5 stars. I don't know. Definitely didn't live up to expectation. They have excellent skill position players. At some point, this is not that hard. You look down the line at Auburn's team. Okay, even with Damari Alston gone, you still have Jeremiah Cobb. He provides an excellent rushing attack. Cam Coleman, 5-star. Eric Singleton, stud from Georgia Tech. Perry Thompson, 4-star sophomore. Malcolm Simmons, 4-star sophomore. How many freshmen 4-stars do we have? More than you can count. There's way too much talent for this offense to be this inept. At some point, throw the ball towards your studs. This is one of the best receiving corps in the SEC on paper that has just wildly underachieved. Your offensive line is a disaster. Part of that is your best player got hurt at center. There's only so much you can do there, which obviously hurt both quarterbacks and it hurts the skill position players. It drags down your rushing efficiency. But that's a new problem. Connor Lew got hurt in their second most recent game. So they had him most of the year. Well, now you're taking this ragtag offense, which there is room for growth just because they were not maximized. But you're playing a Vandy defense, which is not great, but it's definitely no slouch. They're towards the middle of the pack in the SEC. But you're going to get a good pass rush against this offensive line. Miles Capers and Corday Sidnor are having excellent seasons. Inside, you have like Zan Wood playing okay, Glenn Seabrooks. This is a good offense or a good defensive line that's going to cause problems for Auburn's offensive line. The back end is my biggest concern with Vanderbilt. Like Martel Hyde has not lived up to expectations, but even so, Randon Fontenette is having a good season. You have good safeties for this team. Vandy, 68th in coverage. Auburn needs to run the ball on you, and Vanderbilt's 29th in run defense. So this is not a good matchup for Auburn's offense. Nonsense aside. Then you go to Diego Pavia, 69% completion percentage, 8.6 yards per attempt, 16 big-time throws. A few more turnover-worthy plays this year. He's at 8, and he has taken 12 sacks. But Pavia needs to play some hero sometimes. Vanderbilt's 131st in pass blocking, 70th in run blocking. And this has gotten worse. It seems as we've gotten more film, teams really have realized Isaiah Glass is unbelievably bad. And Bryce Henderson has not been much better. They have a good interior. Chase Mitchell's all right. Cade McConnell's all right. Jordan White is a stud. But my goodness, Isaiah Glass and Bryce Henderson have been victimized. Or at least they've turned Pavia into a victim. Somehow he evades most of it. And Cedric Alexander having a good year. Eli Stowers, of course, at tight end's a stud. They get more out of their skill players than you would expect, considering the receivers are Richie Hoskins, Junior Sherrill, and Trey Richardson. You do play a tough defensive line in Auburn. The best unit they have is that pass rush with Keldrick Falk and Kieran Crawford. They've made some weird personnel changes beyond that, too. Like Robert Woodyard is your best linebacker statistically, and for some reason, he's playing 50% of the snaps because we have to jam DeMarcus Riddick and Elijah Melendez snaps. I don't know. So If you can protect long enough, you can throw on this unit for sure. Auburn's secondary has been utterly atrocious, and I don't really understand it. 118th in coverage, but they've invested so much into this unit. They have so many stud 4-stars back here. It just doesn't make sense. And they continue to trot guys on the field that have been woeful, like Champ Anthony or like Jaquez Robinson. When you have very good, highly recruited 4-stars, freshman, sophomore, Anquan Fegans needs to play more. Sylvester Smith needs to play more. He has 199 snaps. Even like a Ram Strader, play your MAC transfer over these bums. It just doesn't make sense. And this is another reason why they're not maximized. Now, the defensive staff is intact, so I don't think this is going to get better. But I do think Vanderbilt has success moving the ball. It's a big spread in the SEC, and I'm nervous because Auburn clearly is a top 20 talented team in the country. Like, does someone else find a way to maximize this? I don't know, but I'm very much leaning towards Vandy minus the 6.5. It needs to be that number. I would not have interest if it got to 7. Another similar game is Iowa State TCU in the Big 12. TCU is a 6.5-point favorite. A lot of similarities in this game. Not the coaching stuff, but Iowa State kind of being a team that is dying a little bit. This is largely an injury thing. They just got beat by Arizona State, and a lot of criticism in that game. I'll say this. People will talk about the Arizona State injuries, like Jeff Sims played. They didn't have Tyson. People will ignore the Iowa State injuries, being down 3 starters in their secondary, among other players. So I'll give them a little bit of a pass. It's still inexcusable, but this team is more banged up than people would think. They did lose to BYU the week prior with a 62% win expectancy, so not all bad for Iowa State, just kind of a rough go of it recently after a hot start. TCU, meanwhile, I would argue is underachieved. Similarly, they only beat West Virginia by 6 points. I had that game, definitely lost. They beat Baylor in a nutty shootout. They lost to Kansas State in a game they probably should have won. 46% post-game win expectancy, but they crushed them in yards per play. They had 3 turnovers, and Kansas State had 0. So that's how you end up with a game like that. They also lost to Arizona State, blowing a 17-point lead in the second half. So a couple teams playing really weird football right now, but we mentioned it. The big thing with Iowa State right now is the injuries are piling up. Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper are out for the season. Tashawn James didn't play in their last game. He's a starter. They need him. Kajan Cummings-Coleman's been out. Carson Willich at linebacker. Ben Brahmer got taken to the hospital in their last game after Rocco Beck hung him out to dry. Abu Sama tried to return from injury, only made it through 4 snaps. Now, TCU should be healthier. TCU's off a bye. Iowa State is not. They had to play a ton of 12 personnel last game because Joseph Manchak and Ed Small were hurt. Colton Deary did get hurt in their last game. That would hurt an offensive line that's already been down Cade Bennett and Ryan Hughes, so that's worth noting. But man, Iowa State's offense is limited, and it's no fault of Rocco Beck. He's a hero. 62% completion percentage, 13 big-time throws, 8 turnover-worthy plays, but he's taken 18 sacks. The one fault you can lay on him, 24% pressure to sack ratio is too high. But the pressure rate is a little high too. Honestly, I've been surprised by this offensive line. 81st in pass blocking, 44th in run blocking. I thought they were going to be worse, flat out. What I didn't expect is this pass catching crew to be so bad. They have a 10% drop rate. They just lost Brahmer, who's their best player. That maybe prevents how often they can use 12 personnel. Now you need to tap into like some Burkle and Moore lineups, which are not the most efficient. Brahmer was your best receiver of that group, being 6'7". And if we have to see more of these receivers, this is not going to be good. Beretta Skillsden, Chase Soule, Xavier Townsend, Dominic Overby, Eli Green, Carson Brown all play. None of them are good. It's a tough scene out there. Tyler Moore is probably your best receiver left. I don't like the offensive line. This could be some tough sledding ahead for Iowa State. And TCU's defense is 36. They don't rush the passer at all, but they're 12th against the run and 68th in coverage. So should be a decent unit to stand up here. I don't know. It's weird. Their run defenders on the edge, like Devin Dial, Paul Olawale, have not rushed the passer well, and I don't really have an answer why. Your 2 best players are your linebackers, Nnamdi Obiezer, Caleb Elamzor, Bud Clark not far behind. So it's a good TCU defense. I think they'll have some success. TCU's kind of beaten the teams they should in this regard and then gotten slaughtered against some other teams in shootouts. So I don't respect this defense, but I think they're okay if you want to put it that way. Josh Hoover's also had a bit of a rough season, 65% completion, 8.3 yards per attempt, 17 big-time throws, 15 turnover-worthy plays. That's been the real problem, and he's been lucky. Only 6 have been converted to interceptions. He does have 12 sacks, which is all right. The receivers have a 7.5% drop rate. And we'll see what they can do here. Again, because of the injuries to Manjack and Ed Small, they had to play a lot of 12 personnel, but they're still 25th in receiving efficiency. That's mainly on the back of Jordan Dwyer and Eric McAllister. They come in 80th in rushing efficiency, a little banged up there throughout the year. When they get Kavorian Barnes fully acclimated, which he wasn't last game, they've been able to dominate teams, but he only played 17 snaps while Trent Battle got 58. We mentioned the offensive line. This needs to be monitored. You lose like a Colton Deary. He's important. He plays center. Cade Bennett going down was not great, but at least Remington Strickland and Carson Bruno are decent replacements. Going from Ryan Hughes to Quentin Harris has been a downgrade, though, on the offensive line at tackle. That has been a unit that has been struggling at tackle. So maybe some potential for Iowa State to have some success. I just don't really see it, man. This defense is awful. 115th, 112th in run defense, 128th in pass rush. They have one good defensive lineman. It's Dominique Orange. And now their coverage has dropped to 81st. This was the strength. They just have lost too many players. At some point, you can't just keep losing secondary pieces. We mentioned all the players they're down. These are their best players maybe on the team, man. Like, I don't know. Just, you have one good player now, Marcus Neal. Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper were awesome. Tashawn Jameson's well above average. So now we're tapping into some real questionable depth. It's just been tough. I think TCU moves the ball on this team and probably does it at will. Josh Cooper is not mobile, but they just allowed over 200 rushing yards and absolutely got demolished by Jeff Sims. What is this running game going to do? I guess we'll find out. But I am going to probably play TCU at some point. This is one that's on my radar. Just want to look into TCU a little bit more and see why they're allowing West Virginia to hang in games. Duke, UConn, 9-point spread in favor of Duke. This is a very fun game. The last one we'll do today. You know, they get a non-con game here as a 9-point favorite. The total is 65.5 points. This is an excellent game. And Duke is obviously fresh off the Clemson win by 1 point. They go for 2 to avoid overtime. 6% post-game win expectancy in that game. Duke had a punt block too. Clemson, man, just getting out coached routinely. But every time Duke has lost, it's kind of been their own doing against Georgia Tech. Fumbled snap on the 1-yard line gets returned for 95-yard touchdown. They had a botched field goal at the 12-yard line. And then the games they lose, Illinois and Tulane just turnover fest. When Duke keeps the ball clean, they actually have been awesome this year offensively. They're a pure shootout team, but this team is very good offensively. Injury-wise, Landon Callahan and Kamari Robinson at defensive back have been banged up there. UConn, pretty good season for them. They lost to Syracuse by a touchdown. That was with Steve Angeli, so a competitive Syracuse. They also lost to Delaware by 3, where they had a 73% post-game win expectancy. Now they gave it right back. They beat Ball State with an 18%, which is inexcusable. But then they beat Buffalo, 43% post-game win expectancy, beat Boston College, lost to Rice, and then beat UAB. So there's data points all over the map for UConn. Games they lost that they should have won, and vice versa. Injuries for them, Tyquan King and Tyrese Mills on defense are the ones to note. Let's start with Darian Mensah, though. Excellent season for Duke, a 69% completion percentage. Given them mostly what they paid for outside of a couple turnovers and sacks, he has 8 turnover-worthy plays and 16 sacks, but 8.8 yards per attempt, that'll play. And this unit has been excellent. Offensive line, very good this year. Brian Parker is having an elite season, and Larson has really been the only weak link for this team. They continue to rotate him with Bradley Smith. I don't know why they just don't make this change full-time. It would be an upgrade for them, but they don't. They're just going to continue rotating Larson. Otherwise, every player on the offensive line is above average. This pass game is seeing Cooper Barkate really blossom, and then you go 4 deep with Brown, Higgins, and Anthony. Nate Shepard has been a real excellent addition to the offense. 4-star freshman running back. Him and Castle form a 1-2 punch. And all that has led for Duke basically to score at will when they're not throwing interceptions. Now, facing UConn's defense isn't bad. They are not good. They're 62nd overall, 88th in run defense, 53rd in pass coverage. We mentioned their schedule has been all over the map this year. Some of the data points we've seen from them, they did allow 8.7 yards per attempt to Chase Jenkins, a triple option quarterback from Rice, 9.1 yards per attempt from Kyle Kelly, the Ball State quarterback who's not known for throwing. Meanwhile, they've played relatively well against some better signal callers, but they also have faced some backups. When they played Buffalo, Gunnar Gray played. When they played FIU, we saw both Joe we saw Joe Pasansky and Keon Jenkins. They played Grayson James from Boston College. They played Ryder Burton from UAB. This is a lot of backup quarterbacks that UConn has faced. And on the ground, this is where they've kind of been gashed a lot. Only two teams, I should say, have been below 3 or 4 yards per carry in the last month or so. They did allow over 5 yards per carry to Rice and to Delaware earlier in the year. So it's been a little bit suspect on defense. Duke should absolutely move the ball against this unit. I guess briefly before we move on to the UConn offense, just some player personnel to mention for UConn's defense for those of you that are curious. Their best players, Byron Parham at linebacker, the Washington transfer. Taekwon King was probably their second best. He's banged up. And Tyrese Mills was their third. He's banged up. So that could be impactful for this defense. On offense, Joe Fignano's been excellent under center, 69% completion percentage, 8.4 yards per attempt, 13 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays, no interceptions, 11 sacks. Great season for him. Infrastructure is a lot better than you might expect for UConn. They're third in run blocking, 77th in pass blocking. Pretty healthy on the line, too. Kyle Juergens and Ben Moraski have been awesome. Even your center, Wes Ho, has been very good. The weak side is your right side, but both Ty Chan and Carson Cassidy have been above average, even though they're weak links in comparison to this offensive line. But you have a pretty good group of skill position players. Cam Edwards has been solid at running back. Skylar Bell, the Wisconsin transfer receiver, has been truly difference-making. And then Romello Murphy, John Nieder, they filled the void at receiver and just kind of round out the unit. Tight end is Alexander Honig and Juice Vereen. They've been a good unit there as well. It's a dynamic offense. They can score on a lot of teams. Now, Duke comes in 90th in total defense. They're 112th in coverage. They've had so many issues in the secondary. They're rotating safeties. They've been unable to find a corner opposite Chandler Rivers. Obviously, Terry Moore's not played this year, so that's been a huge problem for Duke. The real question is, where does UConn rank offensively on the scale of, they played Clemson last week. Clemson has at least a dynamic offense. They'll score on you. But this Duke defense allowed 27 to Georgia Tech. I think they're around there. They allowed 33 to NC State, 34 to Tulane, 45 to Illinois. To me, that suggests that UConn can score at least a bit in this game. I'm probably not going to take it, but we do show some value on the UConn side at a +9. So that is where we will tentatively side in this game. But that's 10 games. That does it for us. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments what you want to hear about. But until next time, we will see you later, and good luck.